You're watching the Ship on Day 1 Field Guide. I'm Hans. Let's get ship done. You're probably watching this video because you're interested in taking test automation and scaling it out to your team. Maybe your team has a large load of manual tests that you, other people on your team, or your QAs have to do every single time you make a change to your software. But as software developers, you and I know that it can be hard to drive consensus on a new framework being added. Heck, it can be hard to choose a framework to use completely. Well, I have a plan that I'd like to share with you. This is something that I've used previously in order to help scale test automation across my teams. One of the first most important things to do is to choose what framework your team actually wants to use. If you don't know what framework you want to use, check out shiponday1.com, where we have overviews of popular unit testing and integration testing frameworks for a variety of different languages. From there, take some time in order to add that framework to one of your repositories. And you can start small. Just choose one of the pieces of software that your team owns. Cut a pull request and add that framework to your team's software. Then meet with your team and say, hey, here's a framework that I'm adding, and here are a couple of tests that I've written. I can show you that the tests run, and I can easily help each one of you get the test framework running on your local computer. In fact, as part of the pull request, I've already adopted the README changes as well as the documentation changes in order to make these changes. Then, set a couple of milestones for your team. Here's a good example milestone. Say, for every single person on this team, during this sprint, write a pull request and make sure that it includes some tests for some previously untested code. Another good goal for your team might be every single pull request within this sprint should have tests associated with the code that's changing. And the reason why it's so important to write tests when you're actually changing the code is because at that moment you know better than you ever will again what your expected inputs and outputs are for that specific piece of business logic that you're encoding. By creating these milestones and by adding the framework to your team and helping get early consensus for that framework, you're going to find that test automation is relatively easy to scale and that people will be able to adopt it and replicate that framework across multiple repositories that the team owns. In future videos, we're going to talk about how to measure the success of your test automation, as well as how to optimize test automation. You can find these videos and many more resources at shiponday1.com, where we'll help you ship more software. Thank you.